To make way for the UN's COP30 conference, the Brazilian government felled a large swath of protected rainforest trees.
The finance minister revealed that the Liberals gave over $7.1 billion worth of childcare to non-citizens and non-permanent residents in the last 9 years.
Prime Minister Mark Carney mocked a question on whether his government would allow new pipelines to be built, calling the topic, quote, boring. Hello, Canada. It's Monday, November 10th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Walid, Tamtam.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Large swaths of once protected Amazonian rainforest have been slashed to make way for attendees of the COP30 climate summit this month, as the city of Belém, Brazil, prepared for more than 50,000 people. Tens of thousands of acres of rainforest and wetlands were destroyed to construct a, quote, sustainable four-lane highway earlier this year for the climate summit, which began on Thursday. While Prime Minister Mark Carney won't be attending the summit, a Canadian delegation led by Environment Minister Julie and Canadian Identity Minister Stephen Guilbeault will be present. Many locals live within 200 meters of where the highway now lies, with harvesters of acai berries now out of work as the trees which produce them have since been bulldozed. Claudio Veriquet, a local of the area, told the BBC in an interview earlier this year, quote, everything was destroyed, our harvest has already been cut down, we no longer have that income to support our family. Heavy excavation equipment also paved over countless acres of wetland to construct the road, which erected large concrete walls on either side, preventing the community from accessing it. According to Veriquet, no government compensation was provided to those who lost their source of income. So, Walid, you're in Brazil right now. You've attended the prelude to the COP30, where several world leaders have spoken, including the Chancellor of Germany, Emmanuel Macron of France. What are some of the more notable moments you've come across while there so far?
Well, so far, we haven't had any functioning water at the bathrooms on scene at COP30, unfortunately. So many journalists and delegations have been complaining about the lack of basic toiletries while in this event conference. And part of the reason why the government of Brazil chose Belém was the fact that it had this outdoor space and the Amazon rainforest nearby. But this event has been entirely indoors under an air-conditioned environment. So it really hasn't offered that much value to most delegations traveling here, of course, where the infrastructure is very limited. As you know, just to build more highways and roads, we had to cut down thousands of trees, and actually the city of Belém, by the issue of the government of Pará, the state, has bought and installed some fake trees. So they haven't replanted any trees of the Amazon rainforest, but they have built and paid for with millions of their local tax dollars fake trees to design and decorate the city. So it's been much symbolic so far. And in terms of the climate hypocrisy, I've even got reports from local Brazilian media that President Lula and he has a hotel cruise ship where himself, his security detail, and staff are staying. Of course, Belém as a city does not normally receive that many tourists, so an expansion of hotels is sensible. However, doing it with cruise ships is costing and burning 135 liters of diesel fuel per hour for every hour that ship is docked off the coast of the city. Of course, world leaders' presence has made the event of interest to media from around the world. As you know, Cosmin, I had a chance to speak and engage with the Chancellor of Germany when I asked him about Canada-EU relations, specifically the value of Canadian oil. And he mentioned very clearly that Germany are open to the LNG marketplace from other providers to get off Russian oil. And he mentioned Canada and its potential. He mentioned how his own government in Germany are investing in inbound LNG potential. However, on the Canadian side, there hasn't been any insistence or any confirmation so far. So he has told me that in terms of bringing in more oil or oil from Canada in the LNG field, this has not been decided yet, and that's mostly on the fault of Ottawa. Elsewhere, the UN chief mentioned and he demanded the international communities, more specifically developed countries like Canada, to provide $1.3 trillion in annual funds to support debt relief for developing countries as they supposedly combat climate change, along with an additional 300 billion of immediate UN funds for the climate relief efforts done by his office. Now, Canada hasn't disclosed any numbers of tax dollars we're sending, of course. I know it's budget week, so we'll expect to hear soon, especially once former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault and current Environment Minister Julia de Bruzen arrive, hopefully by Monday, tomorrow, and I'll have a chance to speak to them. Hopefully when they arrive on Monday morning, I'll have a chance to speak with them and ask them about numbers. But Canada has signed on in principle to both of those UN commitments, but no details on finances have been disclosed so far. So stay tuned for more on that story. The Liberal government has revealed that it spent over $7.1 billion in taxpayer dollars on child supports for non-permanent residents and other non-citizens over the last 9 years. In a written response to a question from Conservative MP Brad V, the Liberal Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne revealed that nearly $7.134 billion in Canada Child Benefit CCB payments went to people in Canada who were temporary residents, protected persons, or other non-citizens after excluding permanent residents. The response broke down the number of citizens, permanent residents, and others that received the CCB, as well as the total amount paid for each year since 2016. Champagne revealed that $241.5 billion has been paid out to the program recipients since 2016. In the first year, over 60,000 non-permanent residents and non-citizens received more than $318 million from the CCB. By 2024, there were over 160,000 temporary residents, protected persons, and other non-citizens who received nearly $1.17 billion. In the first 9 months of 2025, there is already an over 17.5% increase in the number of non-citizens and non-permanent residents receiving the CCB. There were also 2.56% more tax dollars spent on the 188,000 recipients, with over $1.2 billion given to non-citizens and non-permanent residents in Canada in childcare benefits. The Ministry of Finance did not respond to Trudeau's request to comment on how the government justifies giving Canadians tax funds to non-permanent residents and non-citizens. So, Cosmin, what are the qualifications for non-permanent residents and non-citizens to get the Canada childcare benefit?
Yeah, Walid. So here's how it works. And honestly, it's a bit more complicated than most people realize. To qualify for the Canada Child Benefit, you don't actually have to be a Canadian citizen. So the government's own rules say you just need to be what they call a resident of Canada for tax purposes. And that basically means you live here most of the year and file taxes. It doesn't mean you're a permanent resident or even living in Canada long term. You just have to live here for a portion of the year, a majority, and then file your taxes as well. Now, if you're a protected person, so for example, an asylum seeker whose claim was accepted, or you received refugee status, you automatically qualify. So you don't need citizenship, you don't need permanent residency, but you're still eligible for monthly child payments funded by taxpayers. Now, for temporary residents, like people on work or study permits, the rule is that you have to have lived in Canada for at least 18 months and still have a valid permit in your 19th month. So once you hit that mark, you can apply for the benefit just like any Canadian citizen could. But these numbers, we have to realize, are over a period where these temporary workers, these temporary immigrants here on student visas, international students, were ramped up year by year to huge unsustainable levels. So that's where that $7 billion figure comes from. We're talking about a 9-year period. But as for the program, that's pretty much it. There's no citizenship requirement, and the CRA doesn't even track how many applications from non-citizens are denied. So as long as someone meets those time and paperwork conditions, they can collect the same benefit that Canadian families do. Prime Minister Mark Carney dismissed pipelines as boring in a Toronto speech, seemingly mocking concerns about new oil infrastructure while championing data centers and tech as the future of Canada's economy. Speaking at the Canadian Club Toronto on Thursday, Carney made the comments while discussing the 2025 federal budget. When asked whether a pipeline was coming, Carney replied, quote, "It's so boring." He said, quote, "Don't worry, we're on the pipeline stuff. Danielle's on line one. Don't worry, it's going to happen. Well, something's going to happen." Carney claimed that artificial intelligence infrastructure would have a bigger impact on Canada's productivity when compared to oil.
Okay, hands up. Who's working on the pipeline in this room? Okay?
Isn't that a problem?
No. Look at all the variety. Like, Nav, does your, we have.
Yeah, if there's more prosperity, they'll get more cell phone services.
But look, okay, so what's going to drive, one of the things, don't worry, we're on the pipeline stuff. Danielle's on line one, don't worry, it's going to happen. But, well, something's going to happen, let's put it that way. It's not very good negotiating by my perspective. But what some in the room will unlock on the data center side, the intelligence infrastructure side, will have a much bigger impact on productivity in this country. Will have a much bigger impact on our standard of living. And advantaging that, which is what we're doing with the productivity superdeduction. Like, it's an easy conversation to have about a pipeline because it's one thing we can see. But the reality is that there's much, much more to the Canadian economy, and there's much, much more to the future of the Canadian economy. And so we're attacking it on all sides.
Carney appeared to joke about Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's call for a new West Coast pipeline. The remarks come as Carney's government faces ongoing pressure from Alberta to expand market access for oil and gas. Smith has urged Ottawa to include a West Coast bitumen pipeline on its next list of major projects, which she said should be unveiled around the Grey Cup, and warned that if the federal government and British Columbia do not cooperate, she will turn south to willing partners in the United States. Walid, it seems to me that the Prime Minister is being very casual and flippant even about something very serious for Canada, and that's our economic future. How important has oil and gas been to Canada historically, and how important is the industry today when it comes to Canada's productivity and GDP?
Well, historically, I think the question should be framed around both the history but also the future. I mean, Canada's oil industry still contributes to our economy as we speak and will continue to do so in the future. And that's exactly what Carney is attempting to alluding to by giving this flirtatious remark about something possibly happening without giving any concrete details. But here's some numbers for you, Cosmin. In total, the oil and natural gas industry accounted for $71.4 billion, or 3.2% of Canada's overall GDP in 2022, according to the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. Now, further on, that also accounts for a large number of workers. It accounts for a large number of government revenue that funds our services. The industry is still projected to see some sort of growth across its capital investment, which the association predicts would be around $39.7 billion this year. And in terms of jobs, the estimates look around 150,000 jobs, Canadian jobs, are directly come from the industry. A further 300,000 come indirectly, and a further 450,000 are induced. So the jobs that come from all these activities that the industry produces from both their labor force and their trade mechanism. So it's an industry with tremendous amount of jobs, with a great share of our GDP, especially out west in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, where both the production of some of these natural resources and its distribution are critical to their local economies. So, Cosmin, you cannot ignore whether you're a Liberal or Conservative Prime Minister, you cannot ignore the industry, but it has been very clearly the policy of the last 9 years of Liberal governance to keep oil in the ground and not to expand pipeline access. So we're looking forward to seeing what may change in the future. And of course, here in Brazil at COP30, I'll be continuing to ask questions on Canadian officials and other officials on the value of Canadian oil, both domestically and internationally.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.